So we're moving on to Unit 2, which is where we'll really dive into cells. You're studying biology, you're ready to study life. You've actually already begun to study what makes up cells. Now, your notes are going to start on page 23. That's where today's video will take notes. But after your last test, I just want to remind you that you should have already finished the introduction on page 21, where it talks about things like brain-eating amoebas and the idea of cancer. And so make sure that you've started and finished the introduction on page 21. Now we're going to move on to page 23 to talk about things like in this picture, a cell. This is a pulmonary artery cell from a cow that they've used fluorescent microscopes to look at. We're going to look at cells in this class under microscopes. But it's important to remember what makes up a cell. You've just spent all this time learning about macromolecules. Macromolecules are organized to form the structures that create a cell. So this is a picture that shows us part of the layers of skin. It shows us your blood vessels, your sweat glands, your hairs, your skin cells. These cells are living things, but they're made up of much smaller parts. So for example, when you draw a cell, we're going to learn that what you're drawing is actually the cell membrane. So we're going to dive into what a cell is. But we want to remember where we came from, that it's molecules that actually build up cells. So first we want to get a little bit of historical background. How do we know that living things are made of cells? Well, it was Robert Hooke who was the first to observe cells. In fact, he gave them their name. He saw these individual repeating units. You'll get to see them too under the microscope. He saw these repeating units, and they looked like little rooms, and so he called them cells. What he didn't know at that time is that the cells that he were looking at were dead. They were hollow. They had nothing inside. It wasn't until a man named Anton von Leeuwenhoek who observed living cells. You needed a much stronger microscope during that time. We're talking hundreds of years ago. He actually looked at scrapings from his cheek and saw living cells, just like you'll get to see. You'll get to see your own cheek cells. So what exactly is a cell? Well, we start with the membrane that forms the cell. Without the cell membrane, you wouldn't have an inside and an outside. And so remember, a cell membrane separates the inside of the cell from the outside. That is its job. The job of the cell membrane, so please make sure that you write job next to that. The job is to create an inside separate from the outside. Well, how do we do that? It's not like building a wall. Well, we use phospholipids. It's a two-layer. And so this is the structure. This is what it's built of. And we're going to come back to this a lot more in the next unit, where we talk a lot more about the cell membrane. But for now, we want to know, if we put phospholipids together, we form a barrier called the cell membrane. That separates the inside from the outside. What's next? Well, the inside. The inside is mostly what we call cytoplasm. It's the inner filling of the cell. Let me fix that for you. Let's try that again. There we go. The cytoplasm is the inside filling of the cell. It's actually mostly water. Now, what are we actually talking about? Let's go back to the title here. The title says, 4 structures or organelles found in all cells. So we have 2 here. The cell membrane is found in all cells. The cytoplasm is found in all cells. Next we have DNA and ribosomes. DNA is the genetic material. We've already talked about this. Remember, DNA is made of nucleotides. We put those nucleotides together to form DNA, and that controls the cell. It's organized into something that are called chromosomes that are circular in prokaryotes and linear in eukaryotes. We're going to come back to that again, but we're actually introducing this idea that we have two different types of cells. These words will make more sense in just a minute, but for now, they're two different types of cells. Some have circular chromosomes, some have linear chromosomes. And then all the cells also have a fourth structure. It's called a ribosome. It's an organelle where the DNA code is used to build or synthesize proteins. So you need a little time right now to practice these four things. That all cells have a cell membrane, cytoplasm, DNA, and a ribosome. Whatever type of cell it is, eubacteria, archaeobacteria, protists, fungi, plant, animal, all cells have a cell membrane, cytoplasm, DNA, and ribosomes. The last little part of today's notes is going to be on the two types of cells, prokaryotic and eukaryotic, which we'll talk about in a second. As you can see here in this picture, prokaryotes are much smaller. This is 10 micrometers versus 100 micrometers. So what does that actually mean? Pro actually means before, and kary means nucleus. So they do not have a nucleus. You might have heard that word before. Eukaryotes have a nucleus. That's where they store their DNA. Prokaryotes do not have a central place to store DNA. The DNA is free-floating in the cytoplasm. So they do have all four organelles to help build a cell, and they are able to perform all the Stargardt life functions. So prokaryotes are living. We're just going to add that they're usually small, usually simple, and known as bacteria. So another word for prokaryote is bacteria. Small, simple cells. But it's kind of like trying to get to work on a bike or in a Ferrari. Both can get you to work or to school. The bike is just simpler. So the prokaryote is a simple cell. It still does all of the Stargardt life functions. It just uses very simple ways to do those. They're also usually unicellular, meaning they're usually just one cell big. So this is a general idea of what prokaryotes are. Smaller, simpler cells. Eukaryotic cells are going to be much more complex. Eukaryote means true nucleus. They always have a nucleus, and it's usually shown right there in the middle of the cell. This nucleus is where they're going to protect the DNA. So U means true and kary means nucleus. True nucleus cells. They have a membrane to surround the DNA. They have all four main organelles and up to 7 more. So they might have 11 different organelles. Things like a mitochondria, a chloroplast, a lysosome, lots of different little parts that make it more complex. So if prokaryotes are small and simple, eukaryotes are usually larger and more complex. So let's add that in. Eukaryotes are larger, they're complex, and they include plants, animals, fungi, and protists. So many different things are eukaryotes with these complex cells. At this point, it's time to take a break. It's time to do your summary box. Reminder, your summary box needs to refer, so in your summary, you've got the box down there at the bottom. You need to refer to a diagram. Refer to diagram. What does that mean? Well, you only have one diagram here. So you need to refer to this diagram, and you need to use 2 new vocab You might use words like organelle. You might use words like prokaryotic and eukaryotic. But in your summary box, you need to refer to this diagram and use 2 new vocabulary words. Please make sure that you now go do your Google form. That would be the 2.1a form.